Jeffrey Jarvis.
Peter Dominic.
That's our new intro for our show. We hope you like it.
I'm bad at I can't even come up with the word. What do you do when you don't know what you're doing, but you just do it live? It's called
I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Yeah, do it live.
We are live with the Jarvis, and I was so happy that you were available to join me today because there's a lot I want to discuss with you. Of course, the election last night, which is a real shocker, and the reactions to it all, as well as, you know, we were getting into a war earlier this week, and I don't know, now maybe we're not in a war. Depends on how you see it. President's over embarrassing us in the Netherlands and so much more. So thank you very much for joining me. Where were you when on Saturday night when you found out Trump was bombing Tehran?
I was just sitting around the house and saying, oh no, I was downstairs. My wife was upstairs. Now, you watching this? Yeah.
What'd you think? Were you worried? Did you think?
Yeah. I mean, Netanyahu has been trying for years, as many have said, to get somebody to do it, and he found the dupe to do it. And I was thinking that the I don't want to call them the doves, but the isolationist wing of MAGA would have held him back, but it depends on who he's listening to last. And because Tucker Carlson got fired from Fox, who would think we might regret that?
There's reporting that says that he was watching Fox News, which encouraged him to go. And there's a bunch of kind of hawks on Fox.
Yep, that's exactly what I'm hearing.
Really nobody. Does anybody criticize him very often, ever on Fox? But specifically, this guy Mark Levin, who I have been dogging for years, because when I was at Sirius, when I first started at Sirius, even before the merger, and I was on the comedy channels and I would listen to him. Sirius would carry his show. It was on WABC, of course, but Sirius had a show on the Sirius XM Patriot channel. And I listened to him. I hate listening to him. And I also listened to him just as like kind of a broadcaster. And I was like, this guy is absolutely crazy and really hard to listen to, but he's been very influential for a long time. And he's the biggest Iran hawk in all of the quote conservative movement, the biggest pro-Israel guy in terms of, and I guess Trump listens to him and others.
Yeah, Trump listens to whoever he last sees on Fox. I think that's part of it. And so Fox is doing the puppet strings. One thing that interests me about this story is that he has two puppet masters. And one would think that they disagree, unless I'm being naive, that Netanyahu and Putin, I mean, Putin is an ally of Iran. Netanyahu gets him to attack Iran. I don't see how that works in Trump's head. Do you? Today,
he went after Putin, and yesterday apparently he yelled at Netanyahu, so he's got his big boy pants on. Maybe he's not owned by these guys after all, Jeff Jarvis.
I mean, he's owned first and foremost by his own ego. And he thinks that he can sway them. And in the case of Netanyahu and Iran, yeah, it appears that he could.
What do you make of the narrative that is forming about this, quote, MAGA civil war? Do you think that anything from his tariffs to the, what you just said about isolationist breaking of that idea, invading Iran, and now he's got this snatching people off the streets that some people in MAGA, like Joe Rogan and others, are like, I wasn't signing up for that. Even a Republican congresswoman I heard yesterday, and his agriculture secretary was like, you're going to empty the farms, dude. Do you think there's like any split in the movement or in MAGA over any of those policies, or are they just going to follow him right off the cliff every time, even when the asteroids are coming straight for their house?
I think the latter. I think that they think they because he is malleable, he is Gumby. They think they can bend him. So if they yell loud enough, that he'll turn around on a given topic. What interests me is that Musk is all but forgotten now.
Interesting,
which is media's fault, I think. And the Democrats should be hanging on this because he's a wonderful
punching bag.
Thank you. And a voodoo doll for next elections.
Oh, I actually have one.
Oh, a Musk voodoo doll?
Where's my Musk doll, sweetheart? I live alone.
You can go too far, you become his enemy. But generally, I think that they think that they can nudge him.
Exactly. And they can.
And they can, and they prove that they do.
Yeah.
And it's still a cult of personality. It's still fascism. It's still authoritarianism. It's still going to be, as long as they think he's going to win elections, then he's still going to be the boss until such time as that he doesn't.
Sometimes I feel like, granted I do a daily program, but I feel like my criticisms or any criticisms or examinations of Donald Trump's behavior, choices, policy, rhetoric, decisions are rote, or we're numb to them, or I can't believe we're still talking about this guy for 10 years. But then another part of me says it's very important that we make sure that we remark on things day to day or whenever we're given the opportunity to make sure people know that this is not normal. And yesterday I really went crazy because I was at the gym. I was doing lower body. Anyway, there I was doing deadlifts with my daughter, and much less weight. And I see that he's attacking three women of color, three of the most influential, inspiring, intelligent women in Congress, women who've been elected by Americans in their district, who have really proven themselves. Ilhan Omar, Jasmine Crockett, and of course AOC. They're stupid, they're dumb, all kinds of terrible things. And I thought, we can't just ignore this. This is dangerous. Two legislators were just assassinated in their home. This is the president of the United States publicly calling out these three women of color who are already in danger because the last time he did it. It's so dangerous. And I feel like my big rant here is we can't let any of this be normal. We have to keep, sadly, I don't want to, talking about everything that he's doing and saying and being.
So I make it a shtick now, I guess, on this show that every time I'm on, I talk about Hannah Arendt. But when she died, she had one piece of paper in the typewriter. Well, you'll tell the kids later what a typewriter is. And it was the beginning of a part of her book about judgment. And my theory these days is that we are lacking judgment. We're lacking alarm. We're lacking anger, that our media have just numbed themselves and thus us. And yeah, I agree with you. We've got to stay alarmed. We've got to be yelling about this. But the other problem is, Pete, there was some story today about, I think it was the New York Times, about knowing what Trump is thinking through his Truth Social. You don't have to divine it anymore. It's all there. It reminds me of the discussion about large language models. And Lord knows I'm not calling Donald Trump super intelligent. To the contrary. AI and large language models have no sense of meaning. We impute meaning in them because they give us words back in an order that it's programmed to please us and make sense to us. There is no sense to the machine. Donald Trump's the same way. There's no sense to him. There's no strategy to him. There's no goal to this. He is this narcissistic beast. He is pure 100% ego. That's all he is. And I think we spend too much time trying to suss in that, to impute in that some higher motive or strategy or goal. And it's not there. He's just a nasty son of a bitch. And we've got to keep saying that, I think. I had people, I criticized Morning Joe this morning on our next topic.
I love when you do. I love it. I'm there for it every day.
I'll never be on as a result. I know.
Good.
But I've got a gossip question about that in a second.
Oh, they should have you on, seeing as that you're always fair with your criticism. You're very specific with it, but go ahead.
They don't want that. They don't want that. But people get mad at me. Why are you watching this? You shouldn't watch this. You shouldn't get any time. No, it's just the same as Trump. We've got to point out what media are doing wrong. We've got to stay on the case. And as I always say, I watch so you don't have to. You're welcome.
By the way, what was the story last week or the week before, whenever? But it was something about CNN, some development with CNN. Breaking off.
They're breaking off into their own company now. They have cable cooties.
And I saw Dylan Byers. Cable cooties. I saw Dylan Byers, the media commentator, right? I guess he's at Puck. Mm-hmm. He was talking to two former CNNers that I know, Dave Briggs and Allison Camerata. I think they're on a Mediaite show or something, which is all that's hilarious too. But how long do you think before there is not like those types of networks in the way that they are cable news networks, major companies with correspondents all over with multi-million-dollar, $100 million budgets or more? I mean, Fox News is very profitable, I think. CNN is still profitable simply from carriage fees. But my larger point is nobody under 40 watches those networks. And the clips don't necessarily even make it to TikTok and YouTube, where everybody else is watching almost everything now. So how much longer do they have for those of us who still pay some attention to them?
So I'm going to do a little bit of history and book plug at the same time. I wrote a little book called Magazine, a little short book. It's nice and easy and quick.
Really?
It'll be an audio book very soon.
Oh, very cool.
Looking at the arc of magazines. And what's fascinated me was that when you get to the end of the 1800s, it was not clear what medium was going to win. Magazines were out there trying to make a go of it. They were pissed that Sunday newspapers were taking over all their territory. You could buy a Sunday newspaper thick as could be for only 5 cents. And then they put magazines into the newspaper. Oh my God, we can't win. Yeah. And then they led this guy named Frank Munsey to decide to start to sell his magazine, egotistically named Munsey's, at a loss, at 10 cents a copy. He made it up on advertising. There was the beginning of the attention economy and the mass media business model. Meanwhile, book publishers, Harper's leading the way, started their own magazines, and they didn't have ads in it. They wanted to sell the magazine. They wanted to promote their books. There were also magazine publishers who feared books and book publishers who feared magazines. So there was no clarity here as to who was going to win or what shape they would take: newspaper, magazine, and book. And it finally kind of hit a standard. We knew what was what. The roles were clear. Well, today, I think we're in the same boat. I don't know that newspapers or magazines are going to survive at all. Cable TV, not going to survive, I don't think, at all. And then what forms become preeminent? Is it newsletters? Is it podcasts? Is it YouTube? Is it AI agents? I wouldn't predict. I don't know. I don't think we know right now. The problem is that these old media that try to maintain their old life are definitely doomed. I argue that magazines should have seen themselves as the maypoles of community that people gather around, but they didn't. They thought they were a content factory. Newspapers should have seen the place where they could have helped local political discourse, but they didn't. They thought that they were the authorities and objective.
Right.
Cable thought that you care about everything every minute, and talk about doom scrolling. They're the ones who invented that. So they didn't reinvent themselves for a new world where we have a voice, where the masses are media.
Right. Well, speaking of, that is a good segue into, I guess it's not, but I wanted to ask you about.
Just call it a segue, and then it is.
I mean, you said it started to sound like a Mom Donnie.
You can make it work.
Campaign where you have a voice in my campaign.
Right, there you go. You see, it's easy.
Real people, because I could keep talking media with you for a long time. It's just. I do. There's one more thing on it, which is one of my best friends and longtime listeners, Kevin Richburg, listens to the show. And like every week we argue a little bit, or I push back on his generalization about criticism of media, similar to your criticisms. He's a big fan of yours, getting things wrong or not reporting on things that are most important. And I always just make the point that all of these media outlets have to make money. So they have to cover the stories that people will click on and read or watch and listen to, because they have to make tens of millions of dollars. So they also have to be everywhere, including on YouTube, where they also make money. So wouldn't it be nice if we lived in a world where the most important stories get covered every day? I do that in my opening news segment, but it's also my argument for independent media. And because I don't have to make tens of millions of dollars a day. I'm going to do what I think is most important for those people that like my editorial judgment, which is stories that impact people, lives, their community, their country, the planet, not, clickbait bullshit all the time. But that's not the world that you can compete in if you want to have hundreds or thousands of employees. You've got to have big headlines, big stories, and you also have to resource a certain amount of money to the P. Diddy trial or some true crime nonsense.
This is where I'm going to do my history shtick again, even though I'm not a historian.
I love it.
This is where what I've been devoting the last 10 years of what I've devoted my entire career to is mass media. I've devoted the last 10 years or 15 years of my life to regretting that, and to thinking that mass media was a grand mistake on society, and it was a blip. It was a temporary thing that we had. Before the mechanization and industrialization of print in the mid-1800s, the average circulation of a daily newspaper in the United States was 4,000, because that's all you could pull in the press. That's how many times you could pull the press, right? To get it out. It's only so far the horses could carry you. That's the size of your audience. And in the 1870s, Whitelaw Reid, who was the publisher of the New York Tribune, who stole it away from the progressive Horace Greeley, he thought that newspapers would never get past 8 pages because people were already fed up with too much stuff. And he thought that maybe they wouldn't carry advertising because that just clutters the whole thing up. They had no idea what the business model of mass media was going to be at that time. And we know what it became. See Frank Munsey, see Attention Economy. But there's clearly a value in doing what you do. Harper's Magazine, when it started in 1850, its first page, the first issue, said we're here to cut through all the volume we now get thanks to the steam press, and we're going to find the good stuff for you. That's what you do. And I think there's a huge value in that, not only in finding the good stuff, but in finding the stuff that's not AI slop, that's made by human beings.
Well, I don't know how I'm going to necessarily navigate that. I may need a course on it. By the way, we've got like a record number of people viewing this because you're the guest and you shared it on Twitter. So for all of your fans, followers, please subscribe to
This guy's Pete Dominic. He's great.
You pointed the wrong way. You're pointing the wrong way.
All right.
Who else are you on with?
I always do that. I get so confused.
I'm alone. YouTube.com/standup with Pete. And every day I'm interviewing the smartest people in the world. And anytime I can.
And when he can't find anybody else, then he gets me.
Then not at all. One of our favorites, Jeff Jarvis, who I've known since my Sirius XM days. All right, so Mamlam Zomdani. We got to learn his name. Zoran Mamdani. And it is a real shocker. And we can talk about the media's response to it or the media's coverage of the campaign. There's certain expectations, I suppose, that you had with the right-wing Murdoch New York Post. But the New York Times surprisingly didn't endorse and seemed to be critical and seemed to be supporting slightly some of the other candidates that had a big corporate backing and so on. But what are your thoughts about the campaign before we get to the results? The Democratic primary in New York.
Brilliant campaign, extremely well done. Brilliant candidate. Charmed people. Showed them that he had stood for something. Gave us something to care about. The New York Times behaved dreadfully. They decided sometime last year they were not going to do any more local endorsements. Well, then they found themselves stuck because they couldn't stand Mamdani. And so they didn't really want to, I don't think, endorse Cuomo, but they wanted Cuomo. So they did this backward thing where they said, don't even rank Mamdani because he's not qualified. It was awful. It was terrible. And I think the best part about him winning, besides it's going to be better for New York, I think, and besides Andrew Cuomo being sent back to his cave, is that it shows how New York Times is no longer the New York Times. It is completely out of touch with this city. And it was a screw you to both Andrew Cuomo and A.G. Sulzberger. And I think they deserve it.
Yeah, very well said. And it's worth noting, I saw you sharing this, New York Times coverage of Bill de Blasio when he won, and the New York Times, or rather New York Post coverage. I'm talking about the Post coverage of de Blasio and the Post coverage of this guy. There's a lot of socialist, communist. It's crazy. I hate that. I hate those words, socialist, especially anybody who calls a politician a socialist. I really want to know what they mean by that. Unpack it a little bit. I looked up his platform, and it's like freeze the rent. Fast, fare-free buses, Department of Community Safety, no-cost childcare, city-owned grocery stores, housing by and for New York, cracking down on bad landlords, taxes on big corporations and the wealthiest New Yorkers. Just a few things that are kind of unique and interesting. And when you read them like that and you disassemble them from any traditional political ideology, let's debate them. Let's discuss them. Let's talk about how realistic they are. But when I read that, I thought the vast majority of New Yorkers, for which I counted myself as one for 12 years, including 9/11, would look at those and go, this is fucking awesome. Yeah. I mean, how are we going to afford this? But yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah. And so the Times, after it embarrassed itself in the editorial page, and then I think this morning, the Times and the Post, both the New York, Washington Post, both made it about Cuomo. He embarrasses Cuomo, that Cuomo was the story. No, his movement was the story. Then the Times this afternoon came along and did the trope of out of a severely divided Democrat Party, da 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 da. Well, no, the Democratic Party showed itself to not be divided. In fact, I think the most amazing part of this story is the cooperation between Lander and Mamdani, that they agreed to cross list, and that Lander basically sacrificed himself for the good of the city, put us together. By that point, it was clear that Mamdani was going to be ahead of Lander at least. And let's together defeat Cuomo, and let's together stand for the city. And it was a selfless political act of unity. That's a great thing for this party. It's an amazing thing that this party came together. They defeated the sexual abuser of Andrew Cuomo, and they stood up for the city, and they did so in unity, a Jew and a Muslim. What's not to love?
I love what you just said. That's one really very important detail. There's a lot of concern and fear amongst the Jewish diaspora in New York City about Zohran Mamdani's statements or support or lack of support for the country of Israel. And I thought, if you listen to the guy, I hadn't heard every single thing he said, but I thought him on Colbert with Brad Lander was such a really important point. The way he answered the question that Colbert asked, does Israel have the right to exist? I was like, everybody should listen to that and give the same answer.
What did you think about Colbert in that moment? I think Mamdani did a great job. What did you think about Colbert?
Yes. So my friend Sam Cedar on Majority Report asked this question, and I didn't get to see him give his answer. But why is that a question? I don't understand why.
I thought Colbert was pushing him harder than he would have other guests.
For sure he was.
And not in a devil's advocate kind of way, not in a, I'm asking you this so you can give me an answer, so we can hear what you say. It was more like BBC hostile to me. Maybe I'm wrong. I love Colbert, but it struck me that it was kind of a little over the edge.
No, I did not see it that way at all. And I have plenty of reason to criticize him. I worked for him 6 years, love him. But I saw, sides of him, never anything that was in any way bad, like really bad. But sides of him that were, you could tell his core sense of morality and opinions were coming through, were bleeding through in any number of ways, both off camera and on camera. For sure, I saw him. Very competitive guy, very competitive, big ego, and so on. But like in terms of religion, or in terms of that, I didn't see that. I thought it was a question that helped set up Zohran Mamdani. And I almost wondered, he answered it so well, I almost wondered if he knew it was coming, if anything.
I think he had to know. And Lander was dying to get in there, but I think it was right to let Mamdani do it because he was the one on the edge here.
He's like, Lander's like, can I say something? I'm here. Yeah. He was like, I'm here.
I'm running too. The other thing about so my former colleague and friend and former colleague Peter Beinart at CUNY.
Peter, yeah, Peter's
great,
really smart dude.
Wrote a really, really good book about Israel, and he's in a very tough position because he's defending Palestinians to Israelis. He said in the socials, I don't know if it was Twitter or where the hell it was today, that one lesson from the Mamdani election is that the Democratic Party has to move away from the Biden Israel doctrine. And I wonder whether we're at the point now with Trump's relationship with Netanyahu, with possibly getting us into a war, with Netanyahu trying to do anything he can to keep war going, whether there's a critical moment here about the American presumption about how to talk about Israel.
It's so interesting to me, because as long as I've been in kind of broadcasting, I've had the same stance on Israel. I've never gotten in any trouble. And maybe it's because nobody heard me that mattered. Maybe it's because I wasn't big enough or something. But I've always felt very similar and always kind of skated through on this issue, separating Israel from Jewish people and talking about it in such a way that I talk about my own country. I'm highly critical of my country to make it better. And I'm highly critical. And it doesn't mean I hate America or Americans, but maybe 30% of them. No, I don't hate. But in terms of, and then
I don't trust 30 to 35% of them.
And I also say I don't like any religions, but of all three religions, Judaism is my favorite, but I certainly don't like any of them in their most fundamental form. And so on. And we could talk about Zionism. And I think, I don't know. I've always criticized AIPAC. I remember I used to have John Mearsheimer on the show 1,000 years ago, talking about the Israeli lobby, which is a real thing. Every country has a lobby. Every company and industry has a lobby. And so it's interesting to see, I think what Beinert's saying and has been saying for a long time, that the relationship certainly between, or the influence of Israel on both of America's political parties, I think is waning. I think that's the easiest or nicest way of saying it. And it's as a result of the fact that people are becoming more isolationist, number one. People are certainly anti-Semitic already. But more importantly, when it comes to the Middle East and those wars, and specifically the what I think is a genocide in Gaza, it's
enough already is kind of the attitude
it's broken.
here.
That influence, I think, is really broken. It's interesting to hear Beinert say that.
By the way, his book is titled "Being Jewish After the Destruction of Gaza." It's short, and I recommend it. It's excellent.
I gotta talk to him. It's been years since I talked to
have him on.
So I will definitely reach out.
So I think there's a lot to unpack from Mamdani's success about youth, about the rejection of the old farts. I mean, Bill Clinton, man, I stood by you through a lot of crap, but this was it. Being trotted out.
You did? You stood by Bill Clinton?
Yeah, in the sense that I thought he was all in all a good president. And I didn't defend what he did with Monica Lewinsky, but I consider what we've seen since, with Trump and such. But this was just too much. Have you no pride? The two alleged sexual predators stand up for each other. What the hell does that tell us? And so I think that and Clyburn coming after Cuomo. What the hell? Yeah. I think what it says is that everybody who's well, I'm already really old. Anybody who's older than you needs to be ignored in the Democratic Party now. We got to become a party of youth or we are screwed. And that's going to be a progressive party. And it's going to be a party that's going to have naive policies and dreams, but that's okay. That's what they should have. It's time for old farts like me to get the hell out of the way.
There's no doubt about that. There's a changeover that's inevitable, certainly away from Nepo baby, Cuomo type sex pests to hipster Gen Z. And it doesn't have to be people of color or, women or LGBT people, but certainly a lot more folks like that can run effective campaigns and win in places they certainly couldn't. But there's going to be a lot of very effective white folks, men and women as well, that are running, that are younger and that are exciting with their personality. And certainly that's what this guy, I mean, even his logo, Zohran Mamdani's logo is good. Everything he did.
Everything.
Was very, very effective, super likable, good looking, funny, always smiling, hard
good suits,
seems authentic, all that. But one of the interesting arguments that's coming out from people I certainly respect and agree with is, what does his win mean for the progressive movement, more specifically, the Democratic Party? So many people making the argument that this guy is going to be, the Republicans are going to make him the poster boy for Democrats.
Only if we let them, and only if we let media let them. We've got to say instead we have a new exciting leader. Look what it's Obama. I heard someone say, I don't know who it was, that they hadn't seen this much excitement in New York since Obama. And what did the right wing do? Of course they went after him. What had made Trump? Okay, but we can't let that stop us.
Yeah.
From time to have exciting and candidacies.
How did a man whose name was one letter off Osama overcome that? Like, how did he overcome that? Was it just the strength of his personality and rhetorical skills and good looking, and was it just that you just couldn't paint him as this terrible Muslim terrorist? No one was buying it. Is that it?
I think it was no drama Obama. I mean, at the time, I supported Hillary Clinton over Obama at the time because I thought Obama was fairly empty rhetoric. Hope, change. It was fairly meaningless. Though the argument is, I think that gave people to hope in, that they imbued it with whatever their hopes were, and it worked. And I remember there was a progressive in New York who got really angry at Obama because he didn't accomplish all the things we wanted him to accomplish, right? And he said to me later, he said, well, you were right about Obama, because I didn't expect much from Obama, and so I was delighted with what we got, all in all. And I think that the progressive wing expected too much from him once he was in, They kind of abandoned him in a way, and the same problem in a way for Hillary, and the same problem for Biden, certainly. And so we've got to have a different viewpoint, and we can't shy away from somebody who's exciting people.
I'll leave it to those who wrote the books on Obama, like Jonathan Alter and Ezra Klein. But I covered him for several years every day, and my memory of it isn't that the progressives left him behind. It really was every day covering the Obama administration was an education on the Senate filibuster. Mm-hmm. It was like the House voted for very progressive bills, cap and trade and universal pre-K and immigration when Democrats ran the House. So I'd be interested in see what progressive ideas failed in the House, but they passed all kinds of bills that died in the Senate because of people like Joe Manchin and Joe Lieberman and a few others. But otherwise, I think he could have gotten a lot more done.
I think he could have. What's scaring me right now is that though I see this really exciting movement in the Democratic Party, the old farts are all trying to tamp it down, and the leadership of the Democratic Party is in complete shambles, and the midterms are around the corner. And I don't see a winning strategy here. I don't see the effort and resource being put into it. And I'm scared that this is not only an opportunity, it is a crucial crying need. We have to win at the midterms. We have to stop Trump as best we can then. And I'm afraid we're going to blow it.
You think
because we're yelling at each other.
You think there's going to be free and fair midterms?
Well, that's another question.
Okay.
Will there ever be free and fair elections in America again?
I have to ask.
I mean, what gets us out of this nightmare of Trump? My worst nightmare is that you have to reach a point of cauterizing the wounds. That if Germany had settled World War II, it wouldn't be the Germany of today. It was the Germany of today because it was destroyed. It destroyed itself. And at that point, everyone had to admit that that was the wrong path, and we've got to find a different path. Do we have to get to that point of destruction in this country?
Please no.
I hope not.
Another really important point, I think, that's been made about Mamdani and his campaign, and I don't know that you can take it and put it in other states and replicate the policies and obviously the candidate. By the way, a lot of progressive won across New York State was our primary yesterday, worth mentioning. New York is an interesting state right now to watch, obviously, but I just think that you've got to consider the fact that Republicans have for years been promising all kinds of crazy shit and they don't follow through necessarily. They break. I mean, with Trump, of course, that guy said he's going to end the wars on day one. So my argument, and I think a lot of progressive Democrats, and I think this is what Mamdani did, so it's not my argument, is Democrats should say, we're going to try to get you free buses. And maybe they won't be free. Maybe they'll cost a quarter. But they should promise big things. And whether or not they get them all, they should campaign on them as long as the other side is going to say, we're going to end wars and everybody's going to be happy and all the shit that Trump has done. Well, Democrats, goddammit, should be promising policies that they think they can get somewhere close to, not necessarily 100% of. What do you think of that argument?
I think you're right. And those policies are likely to be more progressive policies. And so the argument about the great mythical center, which I'm facing here in New Jersey, with Mikey Sherrill won, and I'm not crazy about that. I'll support her now for governor in our primary. But she tries very hard to say nothing. She only uses, I'm tough and we're going to win things and that's it. And she doesn't promise anything at all. Where Fulop, who I supported in Jersey City, A, has run something and showed him what he can do, and B, had specific policies and he was pushing for them. And they were thought through policies. They weren't just, I'm going to lower your taxes, which is what Josh Gottheimer said all the time. Yeah, I agree with you. Absolutely. It's time to have promises and hope with some substance behind it. Because otherwise, what are you voting for? What are you going out in the street for? I mean, the great thing about Mamdani is that people went out. Do you happen to follow Sophie Vershbow on the socials?
Nope, I don't think so.
She is the greatest dog on earth. I want to meet this dog. Simon the dog is actually the dog mayor of New York.
Okay. Oh, I see. I see. Okay. Yeah, I'm following
Cutest
now.
dog there is, greatest dog there is. So I've watched her. She's a young writer in New York. I don't know her. I just love the dog. The dog is this goofy, wonderful, amazing dog.
Gershbau. Yep.
Uh, and so she's been out there supporting Mamdani
Hmm.
loudly, and I watch her generation, her age group. She just said today that she's going to have to get her mind around the idea that the mayor is younger than she is. So she's in her 30s, and you can sense the excitement from her and her friends about Mamdani. That's what mattered most, is you could see people getting out there. And it wasn't just to protest something, it was to support something and someone.
Yeah, he's 33 years old, and giving people are so cynical and so bitter that about politics and about government everywhere, that to have somebody that they believe in, certainly progressives. I mean, I guess MAGA loves. I mean, Trump is like their god in a way. I mean, they'll do anything. They'll kill their wives. Let him have sex with their wives. We're not going to go that far, but it would be nice to have somebody that you're pretty inspired by. And I think there's a lot of candidates like that. AOC is obviously one of them. Jasmine
Amen.
Crockett is one of them.
Amen.
That's why he's attacking. That's why Trump attacks them, because like him.
So that should make us on the left stand behind them all the more and say, aha, that's who's getting under his skin. Great. Instead, it's they're in the media. Well, we're divided. Oh, it could be too controversial. Oh, they could attack. Of course they're going to attack.
What about just the simple idea that if his policies work in a giant city like New York City in any way, or if he can prove that people are going to get behind him, which by winning, maybe he did, that other Democrats across the country are going to be able to package those policies, not exactly the same for their city, state, or district, but similarly, maybe they use different language and win people over, because so much of progressive policy gets so demonized and demagogued by idiots and fools and grifters. And once you see it, it's like Obamacare is the best example of it, right? It's Obamacare was socialist and evil and terrible. And now all those people, many of those people who were criticizing it or didn't even know about it, would be devastated if it went away, because it's far from perfect, but it did a great deal to create access to health insurance, expanding Medicaid and so on. Like, people demonize that, and everybody ate it all up. It's a black guy selling socialist policy, even though it was Romney's idea or policy in Massachusetts when he was governor. Don't you think the same thing could happen here?
I think so. I mean, I think the specter that's going to haunt this is the failures in other cities, San Francisco being number one on that list. But that's a story of tremendous inequity, I think. Yeah, he's inexperienced, but if he's smart enough to surround himself by good people, I think that he could do good things. And, I still like New York. I live in New Jersey. I round up when I say I'm from New York. And I think the city's in great shape, actually, all in all. It's New York. It's always screwed up. It always has problems. But if he can bring some excitement to the place, that's going to matter. The only thing that bothers me when he said that Bill de Blasio was New York's best mayor ever, but then who was a good mayor of New York? I mean, right now, Adams is just the worst. Oh, let me rant about Morning Joe for a second.
Yeah, I was about to ask you literally. I was like, my next question is, did you talk about Morning Joe yet?
No. So I wake up this morning, I see the good news, because I went to bed early because I'm old. So I see the good news about Mamdani, and I say, wow, and I make fun of the New York Times, and others, and the Post, socialism. And then, of course, I turn on Morning Joe, and he gives it such short shrift. He has on, who does he have on? Al Sharpton. This is a movement of youth and a new democracy. He has on Al Sharpton. Spends as few minutes as possible. And what does Al Sharpton do? Rather than hiding the fact that he's the one who gave us Adams, he pumps Adams. Well, it's going to be really intellectual. We'll see what Adams done. Adams could win this now. Jesus Christ. And then Joe came back to it in the third hour, fourth hour, whatever, however many damned hours they have. Again, really short, and didn't really treat this at all. He didn't know what to do with it. He ignored it. By the way, here's my Morning Joe question. Do you watch?
Sometimes. I can't watch Joe and Mika together. I can't watch that. When they're not there, I think that's a pretty good show.
Well, so well, this may actually be good news to you. I don't know if there's something happening in Paradise, and this could be my imagination, but Joe and Mika have not been together as often. on the air.
Well, maybe you shouldn't pin a show to a married couple. Fucking idiots. That's the most disgusting, like corrupt, like even Fox News has never, gone as far as putting a married couple on the air, as far as I can remember. All kinds of incestuous hirings and nepotistic, I'm sure, ideas over there and everywhere else. I'm not defending them, but like, that's what you get. The fact that they're on there and it's not disclosed every day, just in case people don't know. But I just hate it. I hate it. I hate that this woman positions herself as an advocate for women all the time, Mika. And I think that's great. But then when she's on with him, she so often looks like a wilting flower. It's like your action is not what it looks like you're being. And so, yeah, anyway, that's all I have to say about them. I guess I'm not going to be on either.
You've been on, right?
I've never been on Morning Joe.
Morning Joe, no.
No, I interviewed Joe a few times. When Mika Brzezinski was pushing a book, and when I was at Sirius, and I passed. I just didn't feel. I never have felt that she's a genuine. I have a hard time with some people that I know in broadcasting. I just don't. I wasn't buying it, and I'm saying it publicly now. Whatever.
Wow.
Maybe I should have had her on.
So I was there at the very beginning by chance. I wasn't on with them, but I used to do blog segments on MSNBC. What do the bloggers have to say, Jeff? Well, the bloggers are hoping the Pope's going to get better. And I did those all the time and during the Gulf War and all kinds of things. So I was in Secaucus when they were still there, when Don Imus had just been fired. And then they threw on Scarborough.
Is that how it happened?
Yeah. And as I remember, I could be wrong, but I think that's what happened. And then I remember being there as I was going off as they were coming on, and there was Mika Brzezinski, who was just another, TV person, and she was there to keep him in line. She was there to be the TV person.
Now they're married. I guess it worked out.
So back to cable cooties from before. MSNBC and CNN are hiving off. I'm afraid of what MSNBC is going to lose in staff. Like Jacob Soboroff has been doing just effing brilliant journalism.
Very courageous.
Absolutely, about immigration, about the fires in LA and so on. Just spectacular. I don't know whether he's NBC or MSNBC.
He'll be, yeah.
There's going to be a hiving off here. I'm guessing that Willie Geist is going to stick with the Today Show on NBC. So what's MSNBC going to be left with in all of this? And now they're doing this. I miss our days on Sunday mornings when we could be together on MSNBC, back with David Gura.
It was the best.
It was wonderful. And now these trios, the evening trio is okay. The other two on the weekend, I'm not so crazy about. And that's their formula right now. And yeah, they're younger, but they should be jettisoning Joe and Mika. The lesson from Mamdani should be to be the young network, to go radically that way. But they're not going to know how to do it.
Well, that's what a lot of the YouTube channels are doing.
Yeah,
and for sure. The Pod Saves, Bulwark.
Yep.
So, I mean, real quick, the CNN show that you and I have both been on, Abby Phillips and her panel. What do you think of that and what it's become? That's a Joy Reid last night. Like, that's the place where ex-MSNBC and other people, like, that's the first place they seem to show up. There's Joy Reid. There's Chuck Todd. Maybe not on that panel, but either way, what do you think of that panel? That's every night they seem to break through onto social media.
So, yeah, and I've done it. And I'm always on by chance with Scott Jennings because he likes to yell at me, Professor.
Yeah, me too. It's
I'm told that he just signed a huge contract. There's no justice in the world. But it's Crossfire brought back to life.
Yeah.
What I want to ask is what Jon Stewart thinks of it, since he's the one who killed Crossfire back in the day.
Great point. Great point. I wish MSNBC would listen to Jeff Jarvis. Someone wrote in the chat.
That's all we have. I
love what you on Blue Sky or wherever. Yeah, I saw you on Blue Sky making fun of MSNBC's new war. MSNBC has new war music in an inappropriate minor.
No, it was in a good minor key. I was actually glad for it. It wasn't yay war. It was
I love that. I think that picking up on things like that is important as a viewer. Know what they're doing to you. Yeah. Know how they're doing it. TV is And it's funny because now you can get, I think about this all the time, obviously, because it's the game I'm in and you are to some extent. You can get as many viewers and as much support on like YouTube or Substack with just one or two people talking to their computer without all the music and graphics and studio and microphones and lighting. You could just do this. And a lot of people like it just as much, if not more. I mean, Rogan is a great example of it too. Just two people talking, no production, none. No editing. 2 hours, boom.
No plastic.
That's what we did today. So to everybody that showed up, thanks to you and your Twitter account, because you went live on Twitter.
It is now 884 people.
Wow.
On Twitter.
Thank you very much to everybody that watched. Please subscribe to my daily podcast, and please subscribe to the YouTube and all the socials, and tell us what I can do better and who to have on, and
Patreon.
And Patreon, of course.
I'm a member.
You are a very generous member. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic, everybody. If I could get new subscribers based on this conversation,
then you can buy a new shirt.
I would get a new shirt. One has a hole in it, but nobody can see it.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, I wonder how that got there.
So when I was in college, a friend of mine, Chuck Larrabee, worked summers on Amtrak. And one time he was a porter, and one time his shoe just broke, and he had to get through the whole trip to New Orleans. So he got some rubber bands and put it around the shoe. Never made so many tips on a single trip.
That is fantastic.
So I think you need to show off the hole in your shirt. And
oh my
folks, gosh. We've got to pay for poor Pete. I mean,
I've had many wardrobe malfunctions, but yeah, now I'm down to just a few shirts because I'm an independent media now. So you only need a few shirts versus when I was on CNN or Comedy Central or SiriusXM, I had to have like a lot of sport coats. One time CNN, when I was there for like a year, and I was like an on-air contributor. I anchored and hosted a bunch of their programming, and we were at the RNC. And my whole shtick was going to be long sleeve collared shirt guy because I didn't want to be taken too seriously. I'm a comedian. I don't want to be. And so the executive in charge was like, "You got to get you. Do you not have a sport coat?" And I was like, "I didn't bring one. This is my thing. This is how I've been going." She's like, "No, we're at the RNC. You got to have a." And so they took me shopping, CNN executive, and then they made me pay. And then
that's classic CNN.
Yep, they paid, and then they were gonna like take it out, and I was like, "Hell no." I'm not doing it. And I never invoiced. I never paid for that. I think I'm confusing the story, but I never paid for that jacket. I still have it. I think I got it at JCPenney.
The lapels are out to here.
Maybe.
Is that long
ago? I should have gotten someone really, I'll wear a jacket and then show up like Liberace.
Something that Al Sharpton would wear.
Yeah.
Or Donnie Deutsch. Whatever happened to Donnie Deutsch, by the way?
That's a good question. Has he not been around?
Not been around. Not been there.
Wow, I wonder if everybody figured out that he has absolutely nothing to offer.
There's that, but then they have Jim Vandehei on, so.
Oh, wow, I wasn't expecting a Vandehei dig here at the end. I like it, though. I like it a lot. All right, but, well, by the way, the CNN and others had all of the people who said Iraq would be a good idea on to talk about the Iran invasion, including John Bolton. That really pissed me off. Like, why not have all the people who are right about Iraq on? Why not have the general who, wrote a book called Why We Lost? Why not have that guy on?
Why not have Judith Miller on? Because this was all WMDs all over again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, yes and no. Back then, we had weeks and months of demanding proof from the administration, and they provided every kind of, harebrained idea they could, or grain of truth, or just lies. Now, you literally had the Secretary of State. This is how far we've come. Secretary of State saying, Marco Rubio saying, we don't need intelligence.
Because it's gut. It's vibes.
Well, it was ever Netanyahu told them. We'll rely on the Israelis and tell them. They told us where they got bombs and where they are, so we're going to do what they tell us. Yeah, that's my view. All right, Jeff Jarvis, took you way too long, but I really apprient your time. As always a pleasure. Thank you so much for doing this, and thanks everybody for stopping by. I really appreciate it. Bye-bye. Ending. And